Hey everyone, my name is Tara. I tend to read a lot of the news and watch the news and look things up on the internet like crazy. Call it my autism specialty. I am fairly well rounded when it comes to politics, and frankly, this absurd crap that is going on really scares me, especially for children that have body dysphoria. Usually that happens in a lot of trans communities and possibly some LGBT, but I'm not too sure because I'm a straight woman with autism. Now, I'm going to be what some of you might be called blunt, or some of you might call it a little too much. So either scroll on by or listen to an autistic. Uh, First of all, not only do some of these procedures save lives, but it greatly helps children come into themselves. I mean, I know that a good lot of you parents are scared for your babies, and that pain I understand. I may not have children, but growing up with a disability is hard because not only like an LGBT person, or if you're someone that is born different, kids are mean little people because they're trying to figure themselves out and where they belong in whatever clique or peer group that they want to be in. But sometimes, in order to belong to a certain clique, you have to make fun of another set of people just to make yourself look good or rise above in a certain group. Unfortunately, sometimes that bullying tends to turn into a mental health issue that lasts for the rest of your life. Now, if you're a child that is coming into prepubescence and suddenly you have an adult that should know better within our government telling parents how they should raise their children, is absolutely absurd as far as I'm concerned. As a matter of fact, what I see going on is not only are they picking on vulnerable groups of adults, such as disabled people for the last 4 years, people complaining about their age not being where it should be so that people can actually live and pay their bills properly. But that took 4 years for the government to backtrack. And now they're saying, applaud us, look what we did. We did a good thing. Meanwhile, I asked the question. So now that they've done a good thing, what horrible disaster are they going to come up with next? And here we are, going after trans children. A lot of those children might have cognitive, neurological disorders like autism, ADHD, or other neurodiversities. Or at least that's what I'm coming to notice as an older adult looking from the outside of the box, so to say. So here you are. Not only are you trans, but you might have a developmental disability on top of body dysphoria, on top of being bullied, on top of trying to find your way in a system that you really don't fit in, on top of having a hard enough time trying to communicate, let alone trying to get friends, on top of trying to figure out your sexuality, on top of. And then you mix in the home life where you might not have a safe place to go to mommy or daddy and say whatever you need to say if you're trying to come out. When you add more and more and more difficulties or challenges that a person might face on top of whatever the person is going through, it's a recipe in the making of disaster. Now, I will never be a parent, but I know what it's like to be bullied. I know what it's like to be a child with a disability trying to figure shit out. I'm an adult, and I'm still trying to figure things out. Because girls don't get diagnosed until they're very late in life. I was 39. So can you imagine being an autistic woman who has body dysphoria? You're part of the LGBT community, but you're too scared to come out to mommy and daddy because mommy and daddy might be the type that might not accept what's going on with their child. Where's this kid going to go if they don't feel safe, not only in their class or in their school, but they're not safe at home? Especially when government is telling teachers that they should bully your child into submission and that they can't learn about who they are. In my books, that's wrong. Now, I will never be LGBT because, well, I'm married to a man and I'm very much straight. But at the same time, in the same token, it took me a long time to figure out where I fit even as a straight woman. Because I'm not prim and proper. I never belonged in that cliche. I'd rather burn the dress than wear it. I don't wear makeup. I don't wear a lot of girly type things. As a matter of fact, I'm what you would call the tomboy. So I have the short hair, the stereotypical, when I was a kid, I would rather far sooner play with my brother's Tonka toys than have some stupid tea party tea set thing. Sure, like every little girl had that pink frilly little dress. That thing came off the second I went to school. I'd rather the jeans and the, pullover or tank top. That's about average. I don't know of a woman with my neurodiversities that hasn't gone down that road. I've gone down that road and stayed there. But these days I've also come into the realization that I also like punk styles. Because, well, yeah, I am blunt. I am straight up. I don't have a filter for which allow for tact, diplomacy, soft skills, that sort of thing. Maybe that's half the reason why I have a hard time trying to get a job. Because I don't have that filter. I don't have that ability. Well, when your child has all of these issues going on with trying to figure themselves out and growing into themselves, and now they have a system that's being the schoolyard bully, literally. One has to wonder when school ends and a person can live happy without being stigmatized or bullied to the point where they're too scared to say anything. Where they're too scared to go up to their teacher and say whatever's going on at home, for which might be of a nature that no child should ever have to experience. Maybe they don't feel safe enough at home because mommy and daddy have an issue with little Johnny wearing a dress. You know what? I don't care what any of you have to say, but some cultures, there's a such thing as a kilt. Is that a dress? No. It's a part of Irish or Scottish dress or uniform for which come from the old country. It was a part of their attire. Tell you, it makes it easier to pee. But besides that, we have no right to judge these kids or put these kids through lifelong trauma. It's bad enough some of us did it when we were kids. And for those of us that were schoolyard bullies, can you imagine the trauma you did to that person that you bullied? Just to make yourself look better? Have you ever thought of trying to look that person up and apologizing? Because people say that words don't hurt. Well, I'm here to say that because of lifelong bullying from other people, from the time I was knee-high to a grasshopper till Now, even now, I still get it. I have gotten to the point where social anxiety disorder is a part of my life every day, and it doesn't heal. Words hurt. And if you call people certain names or do things to people just to make yourself look good or look better or look cool to a certain crowd, can you imagine the mental health issues that develop over time because of the negative impact you forced upon a growing mind of a child? Having these social impacts and barriers cause a lot of harm later on. And it doesn't matter how much therapy or how much drugs you give that person. You wear that person down to the point where they don't have enough self-confidence in themselves. You wear that person down to the point where they don't think they're good enough for a job, or they're not qualified enough, or they end up in bad relationships like I did twice. And if you're anything like me, I ended up with 2 abusive marriages because I didn't have the right role models in my life. I'm not saying that my parents didn't do the best that they could for the time what they had for the time that they had. Let's face it, the 80s sucked. But we're 40 years down the road and we're still bullying children that are born different. This is wrong on so many levels. It's going to damage those kids for the rest of your lives. And as a person who had, in her younger years, at about, I guess, between the ages of 10 and 14, I wanted to die. That's right. I never told anyone until now. I thought about dying a lot during those ages. Because I didn't know how to cope. And that's one of the hardest things you parents are going to have to face when it comes to your 13 and 14-year-olds who might be disabled and LGBT because they're forever being bullied on the school grounds or someone's hurting them. And that pain is going to carry with them for the rest of their life. I can guarantee you that. No amount of therapy is going to fix it. What's even worse is that their grades will suffer. Because if you're not happy about yourself, it's going to show in your grades. It's going to show in everything that you do. And if you're bullying Johnny about a failing grade because of what is going on, maybe it's not the grade, maybe it's the school bully, maybe it's the school, maybe it's the teacher, maybe it's the system. Because the system failed me my whole entire life. Don't let the system fail your son or daughter. I can tell you things that would curl the hairs on the back of your neck, but I'm not going to. But out of experience, a lot of negative impact after negative impact has not only made me the woman I am today, but it has also denied me a lot of things in life. Don't let it happen to your kids. Let your kids discover themselves. Be that safe parent. And for God's sake, just because you don't like that group of people because you might be old school and you think whatever stereotypical belief was before the 80s. Hate to say this. I got many friends that are LGBT. And yes, there was a time that you could actually think that being friends with an LGBT person would also make you of that nature. I hate to say this, but that's a lie. As a matter of fact, I'm not sorry that it's a, no, it's a lie, because I got friends that are trans, I got friends that are LGBT, I got friends that are bi, I've got friends. And I don't care about their sexual orientation. If Johnny wants to wear a dress, I'll hand him one of mine and we'll go to the nearest bar. Maybe we'll attract him a person of his choosing. Maybe Johnny needs a friend to talk to that might be in the know of boobs. I'm going to tell you this. Birth control isn't just for keeping your children safe. When I was little, I had such painful periods and PMS that there were days that I couldn't go to school. If it weren't for birth control, not only would I be a mom several times over by now, but I had less cramps, less pain with my periods, and my periods became regulated versus the irregulated crap that I was going through when I was so young. Yes, it is true. Birth control does make it so that your boobs get bigger. Guess what? Guess what happened to me? It wasn't genetics that made me the way I am. Although it helps. But on another side, when it comes to birth control, there are serious side effects. Yes, birth control is a hormone derived from horse piss, so to say. But you have to do your homework on birth control. And you can't take it long term like I did. I took Depo-Provera from the time I was 15 until I was 23. What that got me was endometriosis and a hysterectomy. When I started taking Depo-Provera, the doctors didn't know the long-term effects. And now they do, and now they're warning people about osteoporosis. They're putting warning labels on everything now. But when I took it, it was still experimental. And now I tell everybody, don't put your kids on Depo-Provera unless if you want your kid to end up like me. Barren. Especially if you're a mom that wants grandkids. This drug not only helps LGBT transition into girls, but these drugs help the body dysphoria in ways that you could not imagine. I don't give a shit what you parents have to say on this. Sure, yes, I agree. Top and bottom surgery shouldn't be allowed until after the kid is 16 years old at least. But for God's sakes, at puberty, a child should have the ability to say, I want to be a girl. There's nothing more damaging in this world than to be forced into a situation that you have no control. So if little Johnny sees himself as a Sarah, then let him see himself as a Sarah. Hand him a goddamn bra, shove some socks in it. And then get him on that birth control. Those suckers will grow. Trust me. If Susie wants to become a Johnny, well, ain't much you can do about the bottom part. And ain't much you can do about the top part. But if Susie wants to bind them, let her. If Susie doesn't want to ever wear a dress again and wants to call herself Johnny, let her. I tell you, you'd be doing that child a huge favor. I know nothing about parenting, but I do know a lot about being a caregiver. I know what a lot about being autistic and disabled and being the odd one out. I know what it's like and still remember what it's like trying to grow up and finding myself. When you're trying to find yourself at such a young age, we need to have systems in place that protect children that are just trying to figure themselves out. So if Johnny wants to become Susie, let him. What's it doing to you? Who knows? Maybe mommy can teach Johnny how to become a makeup artist so he can put the makeup on correctly. Maybe daddy's little girl could be the son that daddy always wanted. And daddy finally has a Johnny. Figure that one out, daddy. Mommy. Not every boy likes Tonka toys. Some boys like dresses. Just like some girls, yeah, they can be straight like me, but they would rather the Tonka toy. They would rather the rough and tumble sports. And if that's their choosing, let it be. It's not harming you. It's not harming anyone else. Because your child is venturing down a road that will forever change them and make them who they are meant to be as adults. Stop putting barriers in front of your children by saying, because your religion or your culture or your belief doesn't allow it. Well, I hate to say this, but you're in a country that allows it. Guide your children. Find proper supports by maybe finding a LGBT equivalent to a big brother or big sister that is LGBT trans. Because a straight mommy or daddy can only go so far, but if you're a trans adult, maybe that trans adult might have a few tricks up their sleeve to help your daughter or son along. Maybe those safe spaces allowed that child to be stronger and help them figure out where the next step should go. Remember, parents, you may spend a lifetime, 18 years, raising your child into the likenesses of whatever you dream them to be or you want them to be. But essentially, it is up to that child as to what they pick and choose out of your teachings as to what makes them where they are going to be down the road. What I'm saying is support, guide, teach. And if it's an area that you can't support because you don't know, then find out the information. And if you can't find the information, find somebody who knows it. It's not just going to be medical professionals in that child's life that child's going to need. They're going to need someone to look up to. And the more teachers we have in a child's life, the more that child is going to grow into a beautiful human being. And who gives a shit whether they're LGBT, trans, or disabled? Who cares if they're not doctors and lawyers like you might dream up? Not every child wants to be a doctor or a lawyer. Sometimes that child might want to become a um, cross-dresser for a living. And I hear those guys make a lot of shit ton of money dancing around on some stage pretending to be a girl that's over the top. You know what? Whatever that child chooses, it's because you taught them to go down the road that they want to go and not be forced into a situation where choice is limited. We're in a country where choice of who you want to be or where you want to be is a matter of personal discretion and how we raise our children. Like I said, I will never be a mom, both medically and financially. I'd never be able to afford it. But the more restrictions and the more we deny our kids the ability of who they want to be just because it is not socially acceptable by your terms. Well, maybe your generation is obsolete because I know mine is. Maybe we should look to the younger generations because sometimes it's the younger generations that bring out about new ideas. And maybe we should look to those new ideas and say, hey, look, maybe how we're going about shit is wrong. Because it's those fresh minds that made the world as it is today. It took a young mind to bring in computers and the new cars. It was a young mind that brought in the ideas of medicines and or antibiotics so that none of us got tuberculosis or other illnesses. And it's fresh new minds coming out of colleges and universities whose parents supported them, whether they're LGBT or otherwise, that allow someone to become who they are today. And like I said, I may not have the filter or the ability to come up with pronouns. I understand why they're there. I respect why they're there. But my brain doesn't go there. I'd rather just call Susie Susie. Or whatever given name that the person chooses to go by. Let your children grow into themselves. Give them the choices that are out there for them. Educate them in sex. If your school won't fucking do it, then look up the information yourself. Don't hand them a stupid book or tell them to watch whatever on fucking YouTube. Teach your child the fundamentals that is necessary for them to make up the proper, correct choices that guarantees them the best success of their future. If Johnny thinks that having boobs will give him guaranteed success for the future because it allows him to grow into himself, then let Johnny have those fucking boobs. Give him birth control, allow him to grow a set. Because when he's 18, maybe the balls will be going northward. And he'll probably be like me, proudly sharing his balls on fucking full display. Because he's proud of himself. I still have social anxiety disorder. I just don't let it bother me. What I'm saying is, allow your kids to grow into themselves. Give them the choices that are needed in order to be good, productive people. And for those of you that have children that are bullies, maybe it's about time you started teaching your children about difference, whether a child has a disability or not. Your child's words, what do they do to that child that is born differently, will impact that child for the rest of their life. And those that are teachers, if you find somebody being bullied in your class, especially a vulnerable child with a disability, make sure something is done to that person within legal parameters, so that that child understands that maybe their words cut and may have a lifelong impact on that child. What you do or say to as children have lifelong impacts on people. And if we don't teach our children these things, I can guarantee you now, bully Johnny, bully Susie, become bullies as adults. I don't know how many times I've come across that. I know what you're going to say. I'm too busy working 2 or 3 jobs just to pay the bills. Well, then find your child someone that can teach these skills. If you can't do it because you're too busy making a living, then find a role model that teaches children not to be bullies. Because maybe then they might turn into better adults. Every boy, I don't care if they're trans or otherwise, needs a female role model just as much as they need a daddy role model, and same with girls. So if mommy is raising babies on her own, find a big brother or big sister to help her along, so that little Johnny that wants to be Susie doesn't end up in relationships like I did when I was younger. You don't want your kid going down the same road I did. Because if that kid doesn't have a good male role model to, if they're girls, or if they're boys wanting to be girls, chances are they're going to find the first thing that pays attention to them. Unfortunately, that first thing might become abusive. Because what they grew up as love was a normal thing, when the reality is quite stark. Kids need role models, not just parents. And I'm not talking adult role models, I'm just talking general. These role models do more than just teach. They guide. They help the family along. Especially when parents don't know how to deal with an LGBT kid. And some parents don't know how to deal with a kid that might have developmental delays or cognitive neurological delays, like a lot of parents that I've seen so far. And a lot of schools don't know how to handle autistic or neurodiverse kids, because we're the disruptive bunch. We're the bad kids. So we get shoved into cardboard or makeshift boxes in a classroom and get denied education. How fair is that? Better known as seclusion rooms. So if your child is LGBT, chances are they might also be neurodiverse. How many times has that kid been shoved into a box? Let me ask you that one. Or shoved into a corner, or shoved or pushed out of the school just because they needed a way to expel the energy for which is winding up in them so tight that they have to move. They have to squirm. They have to play. Kids are high energy little things anyway. But you mix in ADHD or other neurodiversities, it's a train wreck waiting to happen. And poor mommy and daddy have to deal with that when the kid is told to sit still for 6 hours. Yeah, the playground does a little bit of good, but if you're hyperactive, you need something to bounce on or jump on. And I tell you, my teachers allowed me to move and expel all that energy. I was never shoved into a box. And I learned better when I was moving, to be honest. Kids have to be allowed to be kids. And really, if that kid is being disruptive, who's the kid bothering really? Is it the teacher? Is it the students? I bet you anything if you ask the students, the kids will say, no, we like Johnny the way he is. Yeah, he's hyper, but you know what? He's still learning. How do you think I learned how to do videos like this and talk to you the way I am? It's because I was allowed to be me, to a certain extent. But I also had to pretend that I was normal once I got older. Once the kid stage was gone, I had to pretend that I was neurotypical. I had to hide my autistic and ADHD traits just to try and fit in. I did that for 20, 30 years. It didn't work. I still got called a liability at every single job I turned to. That's why I ended up on Ish. And then I got married to the most wonderful man in my life after 2 failed abusive marriages. His income cut me off. And here we are today. I'm on just CPPD. You know what? If schools had the proper accessibility things for autistic kids and adults when I was younger, I wouldn't be where I am today. Maybe I would be a counselor. Maybe I would be a person doing TED Talks and getting paid for it. Maybe I would be a role model for one of your kids. I don't know. I wasn't allowed to venture down that road because it didn't exist. But because your kids are under 30, I highly advise, and I hope your kids who are graduating understand that you only get support until you're 30 years old. Take advantage of it, even if it is minimal. At least you still have support. Because the older you get, the less you have. And all the supports that you have now are not finite. They're not forever. I should know. Because the older I get, the more time I see, the more people I see getting ill or sick. From the age of 30 until I'm dead, I'll be watching a lot of people go. By the time I'm 65, all I'll have left is my husband. Experience life and grow into yourself. And parents, if little Johnny wants to be Sally or Susie, let him. If he wants to wear a dress, let him. If he wants to play with dolls, let him. If you ever find that the school has a seclusion room, don't allow that school to damage your child by throwing them into seclusion rooms or singling that child out just because the teacher thinks they are disruptive. Fight it. Fight it with all you've got. Your child doesn't need any more negative impact than what they will experience growing up. They need safe places to be. And those surgeries, those treatments will ultimately save your child and their mentality if they have gender dysphoria. That's all I gotta say. I hope this helps some of you. Take it from me. Having a disability is hard, but I can only imagine being LGBT is even worse. Because they got a bigger uphill battle to face than I got. Those kids are already in a world full of negative impact. They don't need more at home. They get it at school enough. Thanks. Have a nice day.